The subject of our debate today between Scott Shepler and Susan Fielder is the Keystone XL pipeline. This proposed pipeline is to move tar sand oil from Alberta, Canada to refineries in Oklahoma and Texas. The first proposed route through the central part of Nebraska was recently rejected by the Nebraska State Legislature and the Obama administration. At this point, TransCanada Corporation is planning to resubmit its application after changing the route of the pipeline to eastern Nebraska. The first discussion point is, what is the environmental impact of the Keystone XL pipeline?
Well, let me start off with TransCanada's first plan. They wanted to run their pipeline through the sandhills of Nebraska. The sandhills have a wetlands ecosystem where waterfowl and other species flourish. Digging in the sandhills can cause several different problems. If you dig in the sandhills, you lose your topsoil, which makes the sand, like you get a heavy wind, the sand blows it away, which causes washouts, and washouts are a problem for farmers, ranchers. Cattle in the pastures can fall in these washouts and break their legs, and then the cattle are no good to the ranchers, so the ranchers lose money. The other problem with the pipeline running through the sandhills is the Ogallala Aquifer, and the aquifer crosses 8 states and provides water for over 2 million people. Farmers also rely on this water source for irrigation for their crops. And just think what would happen if the pipeline was a spring leak and leak into our drinking water and the aquifer. Farmers would be devastated without water to irrigate their crops. The Midwest, which is a leader in crop production, would go without crops, and the whole world would be affected by this. You can't really let them run a pipeline through such a pristine environment and huge water source with this company's background. Look at the oil spill from the first pipeline that has already taken place within the first year. In North Dakota, 20,000 gallons of oil spilled because of a bad valve. A country cannot take this kind of chance with a pipeline running through their water supply. And also, according to 1011 News in Nemaha, a farmer hit a pipeline with a bulldozer and caused a leak of gasoline and jet fuel and other fuels, and it all leaked into the ground and polluted the ground. Now they've decided that maybe they want to move it east, and the problems with moving it east is earthquakes, and on November 3rd, 2002, a 4.32 earthquake shook the town of Butte, Nebraska, which is in the sandhills. And but the farther southeast you go in Nebraska, the more of a chance you have for having earthquakes. And if an earthquake shook the ground that contained a pipeline and ruptured the pipeline, then what would you do? You'd have oil all over in your ground. I'm sure there's shutoffs in the pipeline somewhere, but the amount of oil that would leak into the ground would be devastating. That's really all I had on the environment.
Susan, your rebuttal?
Well, for one thing, he talks about an environmental impact, and they are going to try to move the pipeline further east to reduce that impact. But I want to talk a little bit about greenhouse gases, because environmentalists are all worried about the greenhouse gases all the time. And in 2010, the U.S. Energy Department study found that there is no appreciable increase in greenhouse gas emissions by the Keystone pipeline, and that they were not anticipating anything worse with the Keystone XL pipeline. In 2011, the State Department report concurred with those findings. So the environmentalists that are worried about greenhouse gas emissions of carbon dioxide in refining the tar sand that's unfounded. So I think that that's one of the things that people always complain about, that pipelines aren't safe and the refining isn't safe, but that's just not true. In fact, TransCanada, the company that is built Keystone and will be building Keystone XL, says that the U.S. has 200,000 miles of pipeline, and that they're safe, and that spills are uncommon. And so I think it's kind of a crying wolf when you say that there's a big risk of oil spills. National statistics provided by TransCanada say that most of the leaks are small, with 3 barrels or less of oil at a spill, and 80% of them involve fewer than 50 barrels of oil, and the rest of the spills, which is about 20%, have fewer than 100,000 barrels of oil spilled at one time. And those statistics provided by TransCanada just show that there's not much risk of an oil spill. So you can worry about the Ogallala Aquifer all you want, but it's a false concern. And TransCanada has done all it can to prove that. Tar sand isn't runny, not like gasoline or jet fuel, so I don't think it's going to be as runny if there were a leak as other products, so I think that also reduces the risk. The Keystone XL pipeline will be one of the safest built, according to TransCanada, and they've said that they promised to monitor it 24 hours a day, and have 16,000 sensors providing data to satellites, so that if there is a leak it can be shut down quickly, and it would only take minutes to get the valves shut off. So the pipeline is safe. TransCanada has said so. Horizontal drilling will minimize impact, and that's when you drill sideways underneath something rather than tearing it open with a trench. And you can see that that would have a pretty small environmental impact. And those are my points.
And what do you have to say about that?
Well, as you can tell, she's quoting everything from TransCanada. You really can't. You think TransCanada is gonna say bad things about themselves, or say that it's gonna leak? I'm gonna start off with the tar sand oil is a very dirty oil compared to your regular petroleum. During extraction, carbon dioxide emissions are 3 times higher than with regular petroleum, which affects is a part of the greenhouse effect and affects the earth. That's really all I had.
Okay, let's move on to our next point. What is the economic impact of the Keystone XL pipeline?
Canada, the impact can only be positive. Canada has the second largest oil reserve behind Saudi Arabia, and Canada is our friend. We can only have a good economic impact by working with a friend of ours. We can avoid buying oil from troubled countries, and our prices would be low and stable, because we would be getting our oil from Canada and not have to worry about what other countries do. Let's face it, every time there's trouble in the Middle East, our prices go up. And with buying from Canada, we would be in really good shape, because Canada is our friend and we wouldn't have that concern. Also, I think we should try to take advantage of buying our oil from Canada, because if we don't buy it, China will, and China is a competitor of ours. So why give them the chance to buy oil from Canada when we should have it? There are 100,000 jobs possible. TransCanada says, and they don't have a reason to lie about this. TransCanada is a nice company. They have 100,000 jobs possible with the TransCanada, or the pipelines, and that will be good for our economy. And if you think about the first Keystone pipeline that went through the United States, that brought a lot of jobs to people, created lots of jobs. Those people, as they work on the pipeline, they eat in local establishments, they buy groceries from the local stores, they do their shopping locally, they stay in Nebraska motels, Their families come along, and that brings a lot of money to Nebraska. And afterwards you have inspectors and quality control people, and all those people boost our economy and create great jobs, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have those great jobs in our United States. And tax revenues are good. The pipelines bring billions of dollars in tax revenue to the United States, and there's not one government, state or local government, that can't benefit from those increased tax revenues. And those are my main points about the economics.
And what is your rebuttal?
Well, I'm going to start off with the jobs part of it. According to Wikipedia, the jobs, there's 1,600 miles of pipeline, and it's broken into 17 different segments. And there's 500 workers per segment, which equals just about 8,500 jobs. They also have 30 pump stations, which require 100 workers apiece, so that's 3,000 jobs, and another 600 or so jobs would go to the construction camps and tank construction and Oklahoma. But if you really look at that's 13,000 jobs. That's nowhere near 100,000 that she's talking. But if you really look at it, according to the state of Nebraska, or the State Department, only 20 of these jobs will be permanent jobs. The rest of these jobs will be construction jobs that will only last while the pipeline's being built, and then you won't have those anymore. And the 20 jobs that you're looking at are probably specialty people that the company will bring in that have worked for them for years, that know what's going on in these pump stations, and you're just not going to be able to just hire some guy out of the blue and try to teach him how to run a pump station. You got to have they're going to have somebody there that knows what they're doing. The Keystone XL is an export pipeline. It transfers oil from Canada to the Gulf Coast, and it transfers it to the Gulf Coast, which is Port Arthur, and that is in a foreign trade zone, which is tax-free. So the United States gains nothing from the sale of this oil. There's no taxes that the companies have to pay on how much oil they sell. Also, exporting from the Gulf will decrease the supplies that are in the Midwest, which when you deplete your supply that you have here already, because you can sell it for more across seas, then you got to pay more for it here. So that's going to raise our gas prices and increase the price of oil. That's really all I had.
Do you have any comments about that?
Well, I think he's kind of low in his estimation of 13,000 jobs. I think that there would be a lot more jobs to be had by that, and every job you can get in the United States is another job with somebody fully employed. And that's all I have to say.
Well, my conclusion is the United States really needs to find a different source of energy that can help our economy and bring jobs that are going to be here for years, not just jobs that are going to come in for a few months and do work and then leave. We need jobs that are going to stay here and provide revenue for our cities and our families in the United States.
All right.
I have no other comments.
Thank you.